Have you ever looked back on your life and thought, oh my gosh, how in the world did I ever navigate all of that? Well, buckle up because today I am spilling the tea on a wild, wild journey that starts with a wicked candy obsession, winds through some very heartbreaking challenges, a series of very bad business decisions, but only to end up with a wildly successful business and practice that I absolutely love. This story is my story. It's raw, it's real, and it's pretty messy, but I'm thankful that it all worked out in the end. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Clinical Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Rhonda, your no fluff, tell it like it is business bestie for wellness practitioners like you who want to build a practice you love and make a bigger impact and make a little money while you're at it. So if you're ready to ditch the overwhelm, attract your dream patients, and finally run your practice with confidence, you are absolutely in the right place. Each week, we're tackling things from programs to patient retention to marketing strategies that actually work, sprinkled with a little sass, a lot of heart, and the step-by-step strategies that will help you grow. So grab your cup of coffee, your notebook, or whatever keeps you going, and let's build a practice and a life that you've always wanted together. Well, hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. Yes, I am going to be talking about my own story. I mentioned it last week on the podcast, and I thought, I might as well just do it. It seemed fitting to kind of slide it in here. And like most of you, we've all got a story and it's all got some trauma and, bummer things that happen. And that's what shapes who we are as a human. And here I am, 62 years later, still thriving, still doing good. But man, some of these things, I don't ever want to have to go back and do it again. So I'm going to share with you just some of what kind of brought me to the place where I am now as a clinical mentor and a business coach. And maybe it'll give you a little bit of inspiration along the way. So I have always kind of started my story with, as a child and my diet. I grew up in a home where we ate a lot of macaroni and cheese. In fact, that was our food of choice. Actually, it was our dinner of choice was macaroni and cheese, Kraft, of course, with the powdered cheese, you mix milk and butter with it. Oh, yeah. And my mom's idea at the time, and no fault to her, was adding hot dogs and frozen peas. The frozen peas would cook in the hot macaroni, and the hot macaroni would warm up the hot dogs, making it the perfect temperature for her little mouths that she was trying to feed. So we gobbled that up like nobody's business. And then our next most favorite meal was top ramen with, guess what we added to it? Yep, a hot dogs and peas. And so that's what I grew up on. We didn't eat. My mom cooked some, but we ate out a lot. I don't ever remember like eating salads or, we probably had them. I just don't remember. I just remember the macaroni and cheese. My third favorite food was mint chip ice cream. And that became my love of sugar as a very young age. I was a chubby girl. Growing up, I was always about maybe 15, 20 pounds overweight, chubby going through middle school and high school. And I always wondered, like, how do these girls are so skinny? So then I started to have a few self-esteem issues. I started to wear kind of baggy clothes. And back in the day, I know I'm going to date myself, but overalls were kind of in. And I liked it because I could cover everything. So I go through high school, decide that I'm going to get married right away. So I graduated high school in May, got married in November, and 2 years later had my first little Bambini, my little daughter. And during that pregnancy, I weighed almost 200 pounds by the time I delivered her. So that was about a 50, 60-pound weight gain for me, which was a lot. And guess what I ate during the whole pregnancy? Yeah, I did. I ate all sugar. And that was back in the day when I lived in a small town. We didn't know anything about anything. We just ate what we ate. Like you just wanted something, you just ate it. It never occurred to me that I should be paying attention to what I was eating. I would go days and have nothing but sugar. Literally days. Milk, ice cream, and Little Debbie oatmeal cookies. No wonder I gained all that weight. And I wasn't exercising. I was working in a bank as a teller. And I thought it was all fine, but the sugar addiction was pretty severe. Like I was hiding it. My husband was a little, he liked to kind of know all the things that were going on. And so He would snoop around, look around. He would catch me, hide my stash. I'd get in a little bit of trouble. So the whole pregnancy thing was not great. And then, of course, the delivery was bad. It was really, really rough. And not surprisingly, she's popped out screaming and didn't quit for many, many weeks. She had severe colic, and we were up every night, all night long with her in a swing, and we would just wind the swing. And that was back in the day. None of this automatic stuff. You had to get up and crank the crank in order to make the swing go. I know those of you that are old like me, you're going to be laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, she was just super, super colicky. And finally, after 9 weeks, I said, I can't do this anymore. Like I was next to suicidal from no sleep. And the MD said, oh, just put her on soy formula. That'll fix everything. I was like, okay, no problem. I know nothing. So instantly the colic stopped. It's like, oh, hallelujah. It's a miracle. This is the best thing that's ever happened. So I think I'm out of the woods. Baby number 2 comes along. And I kind of start to think somehow in here, I get some outside influence and I start to think maybe there's something to this eating thing when you're pregnant, maybe. So I thought, well, that's kind of weird to have baby number 2. She's super colicky. What is the problem? And someone said to me, stop drinking milk. And I was drinking like a gallon every couple of days. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it because I cannot go through this again. And instantly the colic stopped. What? What is this happening? And of course, both of these 2 little girls, my first 2, had bad ear infections all the time. Well, now we know that that's a lot of times from dairy and congestion. But what was I doing? Antibiotic. Every 10 days, they were on antibiotics. I have child number 3, little boy. I decide I'm not doing this program again. I'm off all dairy for the entire pregnancy and all sugar. And guess what? I had a great delivery. It was a really fat, healthy baby. And he was a little jaundicey right in the beginning, but that cleared up fine. I thought, okay, now I've got this wired. But then I decided not to have any more babies. But all during that time, I love being a mom, but I always had a little side hustle business. And I'm learning a little bit more about, how to feed my little family. And I still made them graham crackers and frosting. Yeah, no, if you're not old like me, you don't know what that means. But, we used to do things like cinnamon toast. Yes, what we did, right? But food and diet, I started to realize that that was kind of important. I needed to address this. But I had these little side hustle businesses and I had always had little something going on. And I really loved it. And then the kids are growing and my oldest daughter was 8. She fell out of a tree and compound fracture. It didn't break the skin, but the bone was completely separated. So they had to go in and put the bone back together and put in the screws and the whole thing. So it was a little traumatic, but just a childhood thing. And then we had a few stitches, a couple other times. Somebody else fell out of a tree. We lived in a wooded area. And that was a fracture. You don't think anything about it until about 2 years later, when my oldest was 10 years old. For months, she had been complaining that her arm hurt. And I thought that it was just the weather, where the break, it just gets achy. And I kept saying, it's okay. On her top bunk of her bed, she would just cry and cry and cry at night. And I didn't know what to do to help her, but she would cry and just say, my arm hurts so bad. My arm hurts so bad. And it was the same arm, same place, same everything. So I just chalked it up to the weather. Well, one day in May was over Memorial Day weekend. We'd gone on a camping trip and we came back and was, late Monday night. And she's sitting on the couch and she goes, Mom, feel my arm. It's hard. And I remember walking over and I feel it. And it literally feels like there's a rock inside her arm. And I instantly knew we were in trouble. I just knew it. It's the mom knowing thing. The next day, went to the pediatrician. They sent us straight up to the hospital. That was on a Tuesday. And by Friday, she had her first surgery. Sunday, she had a second surgery. And on the following Monday, we started chemotherapy. She had bone cancer called Ewing sarcoma. And Ewing sarcoma is not a human-friendly cancer. At the time, it was 2 children per million children per year. So, fairly rare at the time. And I didn't know anything about it except they were telling us we needed to do chemotherapy. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, I think I can do this. I think I can heal her. I don't think we need to do chemotherapy because I was starting to wake up to this world of alternative things. And I had some real Fruit Loopy friends that were really, nuts and granola people, but they were helping me open my eyes that there was options other than antibiotics. And I met a chiropractor during this time, and she was really transformational for me and for my little family. And so I was aware that there were alternatives, but my husband said, I would think that we need to do chemo because if something happens to her and we didn't, you're going to live with that guilt for the rest of your life. And that was a valid point. So I said, okay. So off we start with the chemotherapy, hair falls out, all the things. But I want to interrupt the story here, right here, because this is a very important point. And I think it's been a guiding point for me for a very long time. When we got the diagnosis from the doctor, my daughter was home, she was staying with my sister. And when the doctor said, here's the type of cancer she has, and this is what he said. He said, there is a less than 10% chance of survival. So chances are she's not going to make it. And this is an especially hard cancer because it metastasizes to the lungs while she's on chemotherapy. It's so aggressive. We were just heartbroken. And so I remember that ride home from the doctor's office. I'll never forget it. And I know exactly where we were on the road. It was University Boulevard in Denver, Colorado, coming home from the hospital. And I remember the intersection that we were at. And all of a sudden it hit me. I was driving and I looked at my husband and I said, with a straight up face, like both of us just crying in the car, kind of silently crying. And I looked at him and I said, we will never speak of this to anyone. And he just kind of looked at me and I said, yeah, we'll never say this to anyone. Ever. What the doctor just told us stays right between you and me. And he's, okay. But we were just shell shocked. I don't even know where that came from. But it was so deep in me that I knew that my words had the life and death power. I did know that, and I just somehow knew that that was so important. So we got home and of course everybody's waiting, well, what'd the doctor say? What'd the doctor say? And I thought, okay, here's my test. I'm going to find out if I can do this or not. So I said, the doctor said it is bone cancer, but it's really curable. We're going to do chemotherapy and she's going to be completely fine. They are not worried a bit. Now, I knew what they had just told me, but I'm not going to say it. I will not give that curse, those words. I will not give them life with my words. So I just said, she's going to be fine. And everybody started saying, oh, Rachel's going to do chemotherapy, but she's going to be fine. It's going to be great. She's going to be fine. Isn't that wonderful? We're so excited. We're going to keep praying for her. So we start the chemotherapy. We go down that road, and then she starts getting really sick. And the doctor said, well, what I didn't tell you was that we have to take her to the brink of death. We have to almost kill her in order to have any chance of her surviving. And oh, by the way, these meds are going to permanently damage her heart if we give them for, too long. Like, great. So I kept saying, oh yeah, everything's fine. We're good. Everything's going to be fine. So many nights and weekends in the hospital. My other two children lived with another family. They were wonderful. They just took care of them for almost a year while I was in and out of the hospital. And at the time, I knew there had to be something, quote, alternative. It was kind of a hippy dippy thing back then. I knew there had to be something alternative, but I didn't know what it was. So I thought, well, the only thing I knew, this is the early 90s, was carrot juice and shark cartilage. And I know if you are a young whippersnapper, you are going to think whatever. But that was the thing. For you oldies that are with me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There was a book called Sharks Don't Get Cancer. And it was all the rage. And carrot juice was all the rage. Carrot juice cures all kinds of cancer. So they were setting up in the early 90s. Through the 90s, they were setting up these like retreat centers. And they were like carrot juice detox centers. And your hands would get orange and your face would get orange, overloaded with all this beta carotene. It was crazy, but that's all I knew. And I was just a desperate mom trying to help my child. So my faith played a huge, huge role in this. So we prayed and we prayed and we believed God for a miracle and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And I never, ever spoke the words. We only spoke life. We only said life. This is what's going to happen. And they, one at a time, the other kids that had it, I think there were 4 or 5 maybe other children that had the same diagnosis, but we're in a big metropolitan city. And slowly they just started to die off. We would go back to the peds-onc unit, the pediatric oncology unit, and say, where's this one? Oh, they passed away last week. And then you have survivor guilt. Then there's all that. What you go through is just really crazy. So I remember thinking, well, if shark cartilage can cure cancer, then I better do that. And I better do carrot juice too. So I had no money. And my grandfather, bless him, he called me one day and he goes, "Kiddo," he always called me kiddo, "what do you need?" And I said, "Oh, Grandpa, I can't take anything from you." And he said, "No, I want to get you what you need." And it was so huge for me. I said, "I really need a champion juicer." And he said, "Okay, I'll get you one and I'll send it." And within a week, I had that champion juicer was sitting on my doorstep. And I just bawled and bawled because I was sure that this was the thing that was going to cure her. So when we would go to the hospital, they would give you a little red wagon and you load up your things and her things in my suitcase because I knew we were going to be there a week or two. And in that little red wagon was my white champion juicer and a bag of carrots. And I had in my bag a dropper, like a glass dropper bottle, because the dropper is the only way that I could feed her. She couldn't eat. She had mouth sores really bad. Sometimes she had like blood clots hanging down in her mouth because she would bleed. She didn't have no platelets. So then she would clot and oh, what a mess. And so I thought I would bring my juicer and carrots and I would juice at the hospital. But I soon became the laughing stock of the hospital. They laughed at me, and I could hear the night nurses, especially because their halls are quiet. There's no beeping, no talking. And I would be laying in bed, sometimes crying, and I would just lay in the bed next to her, and I could hear the nurses talking smack about me out there. Ha ha, she thinks she's going to cure her daughter by bringing that. Could you ever? It's not so silly as that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She just thinks that's going to help. And I was not to be deterred. I was not going to stop. I didn't care because you're not fighting for her life. You're not responsible for her. I am. One time she was so constipated that she hadn't gone in like a week or two and she was crying because her belly hurt. And I'm getting wiser. I'm like kind of learning, this alternative thing. And I remember one day and I thought she needs an enema. They just kept giving her stool softeners. They wouldn't even use a suppository. One day, her IV was beeping because she was out of whatever. And I stood in the doorway. They came in and I said, "You cannot come in until you have an enema bag." And they said, "Well, we don't do enemas." I said, "Well, yeah, actually you do. And you're going to do them. And you're going to find one." "Well, we don't even have one in the hospital." I go, "Guess you're going to have to go across the street to the drugstore because you're not coming in here. And if something happens, it's going to be on you, but you're not coming in here. She's constipated. What you're doing isn't working. And I want an enema and I want it now." And that mama bear thing just kind of comes out and they gave me heck. Oh, and then they really talked about me. But guess what? They found it magically found an enema bag. We gave her the enema. She pooped and pooped and pooped and pooped and pooped. She quit crying. She felt better. She kind of came to. She was talking. And so it was just quite the ride. But all during this time, I'm learning more about this alternative world. And of course, I've got my side gig going on. I'm working with small businesses doing small business accounting. So when she wasn't in the hospital and we weren't doing that, I had 4 or 5 little clients and I loved it because I would help them like optimize their accounting. I would help them look at their income and expenses and help them see opportunities where they could make more money. And I just loved the analytical side of that. That was just so fascinating to me. So a year goes by and they pronounce her cancer free. So all the other children that had this Ewing sarcoma, they had all passed and she was cancer free. The other thing that I did was, as I mentioned, I gave her shark cartilage. And I just got it in a capsule, like the book, Sharks Don't Get Cancer. So I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I might as well. So I just gave her shark cartilage. I don't know. I don't have any idea if it worked or didn't work. But here we are a year later. They said, we're pronouncing her cancer free. We have to wait a year and then we'll wait 5 years, but we'll just see how it goes. Said, okay, great. So I'm so happy to be done with that. So she's home. She's excited to get back to school because she couldn't go to school that whole time. And we homeschooled during that time and for a season. But finally, she went back to school. She has huge, 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 big scar on her arm. Big, like wide scar. They had to go in and they cut the tumor out and then put a cadaver bone in. And then the cadaver bone broke later. And then they had to put in a metal elbow and skewer it with another cadaver bone. So her arm's she doesn't have any muscle and it's weird and it doesn't extend all the way. It's a funny looking arm. And this was all when she was like 10, right? 10 years old. So when she goes back to high school, she says, the kids are like, "What's wrong with your arm? What happened?" And she said, "Oh, I had cancer." They're like, "Nuh-uh, you did not. If you had cancer, you'd be dead." She's like, "Well, no, actually I did. And I'm not." They're like, "No, you didn't." So she would come home and tell me, "Mom, they don't believe me." And I said, "Make up your own story." She said, "Okay." She says, let me think about it. So she goes to school, comes home the next day. She goes, I got my story. I said, what's your story? She said, I told him I got bit by a shark. And this is the shark bite. And they started calling her Shark Bite Girl. And to this day, they still talk about the Shark Bite Girl that came from that school. Like she ran into somebody who knew her as the Shark Bite Girl. So, she took the story and made it her own story. So she survived. She's now in her 40s. She has 4 children. They said if she lived, she would never live a normal life. She would never have children. She would never, never, never. So was it the carrot juice? I don't know. Was it the shark cartilage? I actually think that was part of it. I think we had a miracle. That's what I think. But was it the chemotherapy? It was a brand new chemotherapy protocol. I don't know. But I just know that we never gave it language. We never gave it energy. We never gave the diagnosis a name. And so I use that as kind of a guiding point for my life. Like I just decided that moving through my life, I didn't want to be the person that was focused on the negative or saying the things that weren't going to be. I started really leaning into being able to articulate what I wanted and then staying focused on that rather than thinking about, all the things that are going wrong. It's easy to focus on the negative, but I just didn't want to do that anymore. So now I've got this business and it's flourishing. Like I am so busy. I'm on the board of a nonprofit, a women's domestic violence shelter. I'm the board president. I'm doing all this fundraising, doing all these things, cool things. And my daughter's doing well and the kids are doing well. All this stuff started to happen. And I started to think, I think I want to go back to school. Maybe I'll go into nursing. That lasted about 2 hot weeks. And I thought, I'm not doing that because all they're doing is pushing drugs. So I thought, well, I'm going to go look into crystal swinging. That's what I called it. And crystal swinging meaning like all that weird airy fairy stuff. So I thought, okay, I can do that. So I went and did some of those weird classes, and some of them were really weird. But I finally found that my language seemed to be the plants. And I believed that in the Bible, it talks about the fruit will be for food and the leaf will be for medicine. And I just found that scripture very interesting. I thought, interesting that we have food and then we have medicine, but they all come from the same plant. So I wanted to learn about the plant. So that's what I did. So I went back, I got a master's degree, and then I went on and got my naturopathic and went on, did more work with herbs. And I just found that I really loved it. So from the time that she was cancer-free, pronounced, I would say so funny when I say that, pronounced cancer-free, 10 years later, I opened up my own little business. And I had no idea what I was doing, which seems funny because all this time I had this really successful business that I was working with all these other people, but it's different when it's your own. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just didn't know. But I had enough book knowledge, you graduate and you think, okay, I kind of got this. I got all this knowledge now. I'm sure I'm going to be able to help somebody. So I borrowed $5,000. And my husband at the time was not a fan of Rhonda going out and doing her own thing. So I borrowed some money and bought a phone and bought a desk and bought all the things I needed to set my little office up. It was a lot of money at the time. I had a little one room. That was it. And I thought, okay, well, now what do I do? I need some people. I need people. I don't know what to do. Well, my sweet dad is a businessman in the town that I was in. And he calls me one day and he goes, kiddo, I've got somebody I want to refer to you. I said, yay, my first patient. I'm so happy. So he said, okay, this guy and his wife, they're really wonderful people. You're going to love them. I'm going to send them over. I'm sure you can help them. I was so excited. So knock, knock, knock on the door. And I opened the door and I almost threw up. Like it was in my throat. I was nauseous. I got lightheaded. I looked at him and he had Blue Man syndrome, which is severe silver toxicity. I'll never forget it. His skin was gray, blue, to the point that I looked at him and it made me nauseous because it was so abnormal. It's like looking at a bone that's sticking out the wrong way and you go, well, something's not right. My brain couldn't do it. So he and his wife come in and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. I have no clue what to do. Who do I call? I don't even know what to do. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to ask him questions. I had a little bit of paperwork and I started asking him questions. And he told me that he bought a silver coin about 10 years prior, and that he had been boiling that silver coin in a stainless steel pan with tap water for all these years, and he drank about a half a cup of this silver water every single day because he thought that it was going to keep him healthy and build up his immune system because that's the whole, silver as an antibiotic. And he was so toxic, I couldn't help him. I mean, I don't even know how you could help him. The medical doctors couldn't help him, and I certainly wasn't going to be able to. So he passed away a few months later. The second lady that I got was a case of female hormones, and I understood how they worked, but I didn't really understand how to work with them. I didn't understand that component. So I didn't do a very good job with her, and she didn't stay very long because I couldn't really help her. And so now I'm 2 people in, and I've had a few friends come through, and I recommended a few things. I was using some herbs, but I couldn't get consistent results with them. So I thought, well, I don't like that, but what else do I do? And I tried NutriWest, and then I tried Metagenics, and then I tried Biotics, and then I had all kinds of different, like, I think I went through 10 different supplement lines. And then one day, my chiropractor friend now, she said to me, "Hey, I'm going to go to a seminar in San Francisco. Do you want to come with me? There's a guy or a lady speaking, and she's talking about hormones." And I'm thinking, oh, I need that. I definitely need the help. And so I went there and I heard Janet Lang, and Janet Lang has been, out of the standard process circle for a long time, but she was one of the leading speakers at that time on female hormones. And I just fell in love. And I learned everything I could learn. I opened up an account with Standard Process and MediHerb. I started learning and reading and growing. And pretty soon, I now found my niche. Like, I found the thing that I loved. So I started seeing more and more people started to hear. And within a year, I had a waitlist practice. I had no idea what I was doing. I just didn't know. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know how to pay people. Like, I hired a couple of people. And then one lady I fired over text. Like, not real proud of that. One lady, I just decided she wasn't a good fit personality-wise, and I was just too scared to tell her, so I just kind of made her quit. Like, I didn't know it was bad. I hate to even admit it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just didn't know. I could help someone else, but isn't that true about, like, when you're a practitioner? You're really good at helping everybody else, but we be our own doctor? No, can't do that. So I thought, well, this female hormone thing just fits me like a glove. So I started doing it and I had this big, huge practice. Finally, I started to kind of figure out the systems. How do I charge for what I do? How do I make sure the follow-ups are there? How do I make sure that I get testing on a regular basis that I need any follow-up tests? And I started to figure out the systems, and I finally hired a full-time front desk person. And then I hired another part-time-ish. She was probably 30 hours a week. And she still works for me. And she stayed. And then I had another little part-time, very, very part-time person. I had an osteopath that came in and worked out of my office. I had an acupuncturist for a while. Like, I had all kind of massage therapists that worked in there. So I had lots of things, and I finally figured it out. I figured out the business side. I had the clinical side nailed. I was in my lane, in my zone. I could get anybody well. I always said, I could get you pregnant in 3 months. Give me 3 months, I can get you pregnant. And I was like 9.5 out of 10 times. Like, I just had a great, great result. Now it's a lot harder because we have a lot other things going on. But back in the day, it was very easy. And so I found my niche, I found my people, I found the thing that I love to do, and I figured out the business thing. So it wasn't long before someone from Standard Process, one of the reps, asked me if I would come and teach. I said, sure, I'd love to. So made PowerPoint, showed up, taught, huge hit. Everybody loved it. They were happy. I said, great. So then I got asked by another rep and another rep and another rep. And a few years later, I'm teaching 25 to 30 CE seminars all over the country. So I would see patients Monday through Thursday. I would leave on Friday, fly out, go teach for the week, and come home late, late, late Sunday night and be back in the clinic on Monday. I loved it. It was so much fun, and I loved meeting. And many of you have been hanging around with me for, since back in those days. And then that abruptly came to an end, another story for another day, in 2018. And so I had all this like clinical knowledge. I'm still doing the whole business thing. I had all this clinical knowledge. I thought, well, I might as well take it. Then I created an online course or an online program, and it's called Clinical Academy. And so Clinical Academy was all of my clinical knowledge, all kind of wrapped up and been tied up in a real organized fashion. And it's still there, and it's amazing. It's just an amazing clinical program. I just am so proud of it. And I love, love, love the impact that it's having on practitioners. So here I am. I've got this really big business. Like I've hit the $1 million mark. I've crossed the $1 million mark. I have basically equivalent of 2 full-time employees. And I hit the top line revenue over $1 million, just me. That's all. So I cracked the code. I knew how to do it. So I thought, well, hey, this is going really good. And there was no juice place in town. There was only like Jamba Juice, I think was the place. And so I had a light on me and it just went out. So if you saw the light change, that's why. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do a healthier version of Jamba Juice. And so I opened this franchise. I got an SBA loan. I thought, oh, I know business. I'm going to do this. Well, I opened that business in March of 2008. And for those of you that were born before 2008, you know what happened in 2008 was bad. That later that year, by October, we were in a full-on big old flipping recession. I don't even know. It was horrible. We were tens and tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And I closed that business in, I think, May, June of following year, 2019. I had to buy out a lease. I had the SBA loan and my business suffered. I don't know what I was thinking, but I had all this debt that I had to get out of. And oh, it was very bad, very bad. So I kind of started to climb my way out of that. It took me a few years. And then I got back up on the top of the mountain again. Like my business still doing good. My practice still good. I'm teaching all over the country. I'm loving that. I, started doing like functional blood chemistry and amazing. I was so happy. And then I thought, well, I think I need to find something that is going to help my menopausal women get rid of their fat because they would get that lower belly fat, the super stubborn fat. I thought, okay, I'm going to find something. And I thought, well, I'm going to just add this to my business. So I added this treatment to my business and it was working great until I found out that it was illegal for me to do that particular treatment with my particular credentials because in the midnight hour, California passed a law that basically made it so that I couldn't do it. But now I've got huge, big equipment leases on these 2 pieces of equipment, and I have to get them out of California. Now I'm on the top of my mountain. I'm like riding high. Everything's going really great until this happened. Now I've got another disaster. So I pick up my equipment and I move it out of state because I just have to get it out of state so that I am not illegal to do it. I moved it out of state, and that's when everything started to go south. And I ended up being about $750,000 in debt, and I about lost it all. And I remember calling my dad saying, Dad, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy. Like, I don't know what else to do. And he said, no, you don't. Just one day at a time. Just one day at a time. Just focus on today. Just do your best today. Take a little bit of money and pay that debt down. Just take a little bit. I didn't pay my IRS for over a year, 14 months. Didn't pay any payroll taxes. I put all of my supplements back in the day. We had distributors in the day. And I had a great relationship with a distributor, and I just kept putting it on net 60, net 90, net 120, and just didn't pay. And I kept ordering. So I would order, $2,000 of supplements, sell them for the markup, and I would just use all that cash because I was hemorrhaging money in this other business with this overhead. I moved it out of state. I had a business plan. I did have all of that. I had that all mapped out because I got smarter the second time. But then this law change happened and it completely blew the whole thing up. Like it was going to be very profitable and really good. So now I have 2 businesses. I've got one that's struggling in California because I'm not there all the time. I'm out of state trying to run this other business and trying to get myself out of debt. And it just about did me in. But every single time that those things happened, I learned so much about business. I have the clinical side. I know that like I know the back of my hand. I can help anybody grow a wellness practice. I could do it in my sleep and I love it. It makes me so happy. But what I learned was that not every business model is exactly the same. The core tenets of business are the same, but I misjudged twice. One was a recession that no one saw coming. And then the second one was a law change that I didn't see coming. But both of those times taught me a little bit more about how to be strategic in business and how to leverage your runway when you're going to open a new business or bring in a new treatment or something like that. And now, like all these years later, after, all the heartbreak and with my daughter and then running business and then the juice business going belly up and then the other business, which by the way, I should tell you, the second business, the one that I had to move out of California, it's now a super successful business too. So I did end up killing it in the market that I was in. It's actually in Seattle. And I just ended up like nailing it. And I bought my way to the top with Google Ads back in the day. And now we're just the number one clinic in the market, in this greater Seattle market for what we do. So killed it. I won. And I paid all the debt back. I got the IRS paid. I got the vendor paid. I paid for all my supplements. I'm all good. But I learned two things. One, that I'll never not be in love doing the clinical work. And the second thing is, I really do love business. I love the complexity of business. I love the strategy of the business. And I love that life has blessed me with the ability to see the good, to find that thing and say, no, this is what I want. And this is what's right for me. And I'm going to say what I want, and then I'm going to go get what I want, just like I did with my daughter. I said, she's going to be fine. And we are going to be fine. And she is fine. She was fine, and she is still fine. I think that running a business is no different. It's so easy to get caught up in the negative or caught up in the maybe I don't know enough clinically. And I was there too. Like I had to learn. I struggled. I struggled. That's, I think, why Clinical Academy is so near and dear to me, because if I had had that when I was starting out, oh my gosh, I could have helped so many more people. I could have been successful way sooner. But there was nowhere for me to go to learn all of that. It was like I needed somebody with street smarts, so to speak. Somebody to just tell me, nope, this is how you deal with an anemia case. Nope, this is how you deal with a fertility case. Nope, this is how you deal with, constipation or SIBO, whatever. I needed that. That's why I love that Clinical Academy, because that's what it does, is it gives you that. So I love the clinical piece, but I also am so in love with the business side, because I know that without a business, we can't effectively deliver the clinical service. So that's what my story is. I hope it was a little entertaining. I own two businesses myself, and then I have a third business. I have a partner. And I'm so happy. I love my life, but I love the most, I think, the thing that I love the most is helping all of you. Like this business in Seattle, I love my patients. I love the people that come in here. But if you ask me to choose between all of you and the Seattle, I would give this Seattle business up in a heartbeat, because I love the wellness side. It's like where my passion started back in the day with my daughter, and it has never ever subsided. So I want you to know that I am here for you. I'm contending for you. I got you. Like I'm your girl. I am the person, and I'm rooting for you in your corner. You've got this. Remember to watch your words. Make sure that you speak the things that you want to have happen. Align your actions with what it is that you want to have happen. You can't say you want something and then be over here in the weeds doing something different. Like all of that has to line up. But once you get clear about what you want and where you want to go, then the sky's the limit. The financial freedom, the time freedom, and having a practice that's perfectly suited to your needs, you can have anything you want. Anything you want, you can have it. And if I can help you, I'm really happy to do that too. All right, friend. Well, what is the moral of the story? I guess the moral of the story is that life doesn't ever hand you a blueprint. You never get a complete roadmap to exactly where you're going to go. I think if I had known when I got married at 18 years old that my life would look like that, I think I would have said no. I don't want that bingo card. I do not want that. That is not what I want. But yet all of the things that we do, whether it's, for me, juicing carrots in a hospital room or demanding an enema bag or, clawing my way out of like mountains of debt twice, had to do that twice. But I was determined. I had a dream and I knew that I could do it. I knew that I could do it. I knew that I would be able to figure it out. But every single failure is what teaches us along the way. And I think that's kind of the moral of the story. And I now get to help people like you who are in the wellness space and you want to grow a business, you want to thrive, you want to help more people, and I want to help you crush it. That's what I'm here for. So if you love this podcast, do what I always say, that is rate and hit subscribe and give us a review if you have a minute. It really does mean something. And don't forget, this month, we're starting a series where I'm giving you a 12-month blueprint for your business, basically like a roadmap. You can download the guide and some additional resources. All you have to do is go to rhondanelson.com/12-month growth plan. That's the number 12-month growth plan. You can download the workbook for the whole year, and then each month we'll be adding more and more resources as we tackle one topic at a time. So be sure that you don't miss a single podcast, because every podcast each month is going to build on the last one, and I'm going to help you do the things that you need in your business that'll help you work on it slowly as you go throughout the year. But if you decide you want to join me in Clinical Business Academy and fast track your success, you can do that too. Go to rhondanelson.com/CBA. I hope to see you there.